to Leadership Beyond Burnout. I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson. And if you're here, I'm so excited that you've decided to have some time with us. So, for those of you who join us every week, welcome back, my fired up friends. And if you're new here, feel free to make some comments in the comment section, ask questions, and if we don't get to them today, we'll definitely answer them later in the comment section. Today, I want to talk about leading through uncertainty. And I've had so many clients come and just talk about not being sure what to do or why to do it. So I want to acknowledge the impact of the economic changes. Money is tight. The price of eggs are going up. That's what everybody's talking about. But there are so many prices that are going up. I know I went through a drive-through and I just got, I think, a drink and some fries and a cookie, and that was almost $10. And I was quite shocked. Hence, I'm not going to drive-throughs anymore. There's a lot of political angst going on and contention, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. Just witnessing a lot of that political tension can be challenging. It can create a lot of stress because we haven't seen this level of animosity ever that I can remember. I've never seen professionals be so openly contentious. There used to at least be a level of professional respect, and it would be an argument on the issues. And now there seems to be a lot of personal attacks. There's cultural uncertainty in the workplace. With all of the changes with DEI, there may be people who are unsure what the company's commitment is, whether they're going to do mass layoffs. So the more certainty we can bring, the better. I want you to begin to normalize stress and fear and confusion, because teams and leaders, we're all feeling it. From your entry-level employee to the very top, everyone is feeling this stress, fear, and confusion about how to move forward. If we can begin to reframe this as a leadership opportunity, and I guarantee you that those who can lead through this will definitely be remembered later as being the voice of calm and reason. Okay. Let's start with how you can begin to anchor this time in purpose. Okay. One of the things that you can really begin to do is revisit the why behind the organization's mission. Their clarity anchors people. And a lot of times we forget our why, right? We just get entrenched in doing our part of the puzzle and keeping things moving. But it might be important at this time just to envision why this company was started and where you're going and what you hope to accomplish. That can give people a sense of purpose. Encourage some of your team leaders to communicate that shared sense of purpose weekly. That regular check-in becomes critical because it's something that employees can depend upon. You can even create things like North Star statements. Now, these are little short, memorable messages that keep your team focused. Might be a haiku or something like that. It could be something as simple as everyone is valuable to our mission, and saying what that mission is. You can also begin to ensure that you communicate with radical clarity. Now, this is definitely important during times of uncertainty. And what do I mean by that? When there's uncertainty, it breeds a lot of assumptions, and I know even you may have felt that. Um, I know I've done it before. When I'm not sure what happens, I make these assumptions about what's going to happen or what could happen, and people begin to spiral out, or I think the term is now crash out. Uh, so the more you can stop that in its tracks, that's extremely helpful. So communicate what you do know for certain. And if you can create some type of communication cadence, whether it's weekly, daily, monthly, something that the staff, other managers can look forward to hearing, that helps more than you could ever know. Because the level of uncertainty that I've witnessed and fear from managers, supervisors, directors, vice presidents has been palpable. And we've talked about ways to begin to alleviate some of that. And that's why I wanted to bring this conversation to the show, is because if I'm hearing it at this level, I know that in the wider audience that it's much more serious. So begin to say what you do know. You know, anchor in that, what it is that you do know. And if there are some things that you don't know that you'd like to get clarity on, talk to HR, talk to those above you to begin to get some clarity on things that you may not know that are in the works, or as well. Ensure that you communicate what you don't know. And sometimes people are afraid to admit they don't know things, but this can be helpful because it shows your honesty and your vulnerability. Another thing that you can begin to do is really communicate what you're watching. Now, what I mean by that is what you're keeping your eye and your pulse, taking the pulse of, to ensure that there's forward momentum or that something stops. This, all of these things help to build trust. I mean, wouldn't you have more trust in your leadership if they were very transparent? So, the same way that you feel comfortable, the team, staff, they'll achieve that same level of comfort. Begin to train some of the leaders that you supervise to ask 3 questions when there's tension. And this is of their team, right? As well as those that are supervising them. Ask, what are you hearing? Because that little grapevine of the unofficial network, the unofficial news can be extremely powerful. What I've seen happen is that the truth can become a lie and a lie can become the truth just by the number of times that it's repeated. So keep your ear to the ground and ask, what are you hearing? Another question that really gets to the heart of the emotion of where people are at is, what are you afraid of? And you might be surprised about what you might hear with that. And just asking that little question, it might give you the opportunity to dispel that fear and let them know that's not going to be a problem, or this is how we're going to address that. Um, be be willing to hear what their personal fears are. Fears of losing their home or not being able to pay for their child's college. Any of these things allow you to provide some strategic resources, or put somebody on that task, possibly in HR, to provide strategic resources that the company has to support employees who may be leaving a job or who are there currently, to be able to sustain what they have going right now. It'll be helpful to know what do they need to feel supported right now. And it could be something extremely simple. It might be, hey, if I could come into the office at least once a week and just kind of vent for 5 minutes, that would be really helpful. Because it can be difficult to work through stressful and uncertain times. So just knowing sometimes that there's an ear to listen, even if you can't do anything, it's so powerful to connect with someone and just hear what they're saying. I think just looking back over my time as a therapist, that has been so very powerful for people. And I'd say it's pretty close to one of the number one complaints that they don't feel heard, they don't feel understood. So just listening, acknowledging their concerns, and hearing them is extremely helpful, powerful, and can be life changing. Now, you don't have to agree with what they say, and you don't even have to debate or try to refute anything. Just your presence. That's one of the biggest presents that you can give someone, is to allow them to be heard and understood and listened to. Okay, next thing I want to cover is how you can foster psychological safety and create some connection, even if the staff is feeling very disconnected. Because sometimes what happens when people begin to feel vulnerable, they close in, and either they don't want to share their fears, or they're vomiting their fears and not really connecting with people. They're just kind of vomiting them all over people. We know that people cannot perform well if they're in fight or flight. They just can't. And fight, flight, or freeze, they're not going to give their best work. If you can begin to promote calm leadership when they see you responding to situations and not reacting, that can be extremely helpful, supportive, anchoring. What I mean by responding and not reacting is taking a pragmatic approach that resolves issues, getting necessary supports, and trying to gather resources to be able to address whatever the issue is. When you are reacting, uh, it can be unplanned, uh, not very strategic, knee jerk reactions, emotional reactions. It may have been sending off and firing off an email um, with a hot head that you regret later. I can definitely say that I've done that in the past and never want to get back there. So, calm leadership can really be a lighthouse for people, to let them know, okay, if you're not losing it and you're responding rationally, then that gives them a sense of peace. There are things that they don't need to worry about because you're responding and not reacting. Try to begin to model vulnerability if you haven't, and admit that there's uncertainty. That allows you to share information without losing credibility. So if you're concerned, or if you're afraid, admit that. There are things you don't know. Let them know you just don't know it. And what you're doing, or what the plans are to get more clarity on that. There may be some things that you just absolutely cannot know. I know one of the young men who is a manager in a government organization, he was very frustrated because he could not give clarity about what would happen if his staff, if they were going to be terminated. And he wanted to be able to say, well, as soon as I hear, I'll let you know. You'll at least have 2 weeks, a month to be able to get things together personally. And with the rapidity that actions are taking shape in the government, these are his words. Um, he just can't provide that certainty. He can't reassure them, which is very frustrating because that's not how he operates. So that's an adjustment, and just admitting that he's frustrated and he doesn't know, while it doesn't resolve the issue, it gives an empathetic response and a true response to let them know where you are with all of everything that's happening within your company or within the larger um, socio-political landscape. If you're comfortable, begin to use some empathy-based check-ins. And that's where it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing. But you can allow people to just say what's heavy on their mind this week. Okay. Um, some may want to do it every day, depending upon how your office environment is or your work environment is. And if you're not comfortable for that, you can bring someone in to do some empathy based check ins. Everyone's not comfortable with feelings and emotions and may not know how to redirect that. Because let's face it, there are some people who will suck up the room with their emotions and the story never seems to end. So having someone with some skill to be able to rein that in, refocus, and allow everyone to be able to share what's going on is important. Because if you let that one person begin to monopolize the time, other people will begin to clam up. They'll be annoyed and they'll feel like there's not enough time for them to share what they wanted to share, or they may not want to be identified with that person in the way that they respond. So if they're responding like uh, a chicken with their head cut off and the sky is falling everywhere, they might not respect how that person looks and begin to doubt themselves and think, oh wow, I don't want to come off that way, so I'm just going to not say anything. I'm going to suck it up and suffer in silence, essentially, because it can be so very cathartic just to let it out. And like I said, this doesn't have to be something long and drawn out. It could just be a matter of saying what's on your mind. Uh, I wouldn't recommend doing this by email, um, because you and I both know that so much gets lost in the translation of email or the written word, or sometimes people respond impulsively and angrily because you don't have someone there to be able to bounce off their emotions and how they're feeling and to see how they're responding to you. So, wouldn't recommend having any empathy based check ins by email. Begin to encourage, if it's not already in place, but hopefully it is, that there's some peer-to-peer type of support systems or some buddy structures that are happening, and they may begin to occur naturally. So you don't have to sit there and, okay, I'm pairing this person with this person because they'll do that and try and match up people's personalities and their temperaments. uh, you can show support for that type of thing occurring by having a space where people can meet so that they can do their peer-to-peer support system, or even just saying that this is the time of day or the time of the week that you allow space for that. So that lets people know it's okay. I know when I've been in the trenches and that peer to peer support system would begin to form, we were always unsure if how that would be perceived. We didn't know whether that would be seen like it was disloyal, especially if there was something that we were not happy about, or whether it might be met with excitement and willingness to hear some of the ways that possibly things could be done better. So instead of having staff sneak around to support one another and listen to their challenges, give space for that. Okay. And it doesn't, if work is too fast paced, it doesn't have to be during working hours. You can do it as informal get togethers where people can just kind of chop it up. The next thing I want to talk about is how you can begin to empower some adaptive action. So, adaptation. That's one of the things that I loved about Marine Corps leadership. They said, adapt and overcome. That's one of the key features of being a Marine leader or a basic Marine is the ability to adapt and overcome the situation. So if there is a workplace culture of flexibility that can occur without chaos, that is extremely helpful. Now, I realize that in some work, especially in healthcare, there may be some areas with very minimal flexibility because of regulations, patient care, and a variety of different things. But where we can be flexible, let that be known that there's some flexibility within the chaos and how that you're open to new ideas. Teach the team to begin to focus on what they can control. We can begin to rein in some of that fear, some of that chaos, if we know, okay, I have pure dominion over this area. So I'm going to make the best of what I can control. And it sounds very cliche, but during times of uncertainty, during times of stress, remember, we're in our amygdala, the back of the brain, and we aren't operating from logic and creativity because we're in that fight or flight. So reminding them that they have the power to be able to do that, that flexibility in some areas that they can control can be extremely powerful. Okay. You can get managers together or either teams together and create some if-then thinking possibilities. This can reduce some panic, okay? Knowing that there is a plan in place of what to do if their fears become reality, or if something very positive comes up, just letting them know, okay, I know how we're going to handle this situation. Don't underestimate the power of planning your emotional, social, strategic response to an uncertain situation. Begin to highlight the wins that are occurring in the company, on the team, in the industry. Even small ones can create good feelings, a sense of calm, and it may even create some momentum. So even just asking, before you start the meeting, what are some wins that we can share? And if they can't think of wins, allow them in their role, encourage them to share personal wins, because that's still momentum and it gives people permission to share the things that are good in their life. To also ensure that you're remaining in an adaptive response. Encourage experimentation. No one wants to experiment or try something new if they feel like they're going to get their hands slapped or their head hammered if they try something new. So have a culture of try, test, learn, adjust. That is how innovation can occur. That's how adaptability can occur. That just creates so many more possibilities. So these are extremely uncertain times now. And I know we've talked about this before, but I just wanted to bring it to the forefront because I'm still hearing it from people. Begin to contribute to calm as much as possible. Be the thermostat, not the thermometer. Okay. Leaders set the emotional tone. So if you can remain grounded, stay focused, remain hopeful, that can mean everything. Now, let me share with you something before we wrap up. So, there is a workshop coming. I don't know when you're going to see this. You may be seeing this later, but around September, October 2025, there is going to be an opportunity to meet in person and do some renewal work. So, going to give you details later, but just keep that in mind, and I'll give you some dates soon as well. Uh, just remember, overall, you don't have to have all the answers, but you can continue to ask the right questions. And even if you ask the wrong ones, you'll get an answer. You'll get closer to the certainty that people crave. Now, when I have guests, I often allow them to issue a challenge to the audience so that they can move further in their area of expertise. What will you do in this upcoming week to begin to lead with clarity, courage, and care? Now, just one thing. We don't have to make it complicated. Just what will you do this week to lead with clarity, courage, and care? I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson. Thank you for being here with me this time. You can catch us here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on E360 TV, Vitality, or you can catch me on the social networks. Until next time.